18 months isn't meaningless, Robert, I replied, standing my ground. And you didn't just cheat. You lied to everyone. You created an entirely separate life. I was weak, he admitted, his voice breaking. Selfish, but losing you. His voice faltered. I can't lose you, Sarah. For a moment, a flicker of the love that had sustained me for 5 years surfaced. Then the photos from San Diego, the jewelry receipts, the calculated lies returned. You already have, I said quietly, the moment you chose her the first time. He looked up sharply. So that's it? 5 years of marriage just over? It was over long before today, I said, my voice steady. I just didn't know it. I picked up my bag. Diana Moore has the divorce papers ready. This doesn't need to be messier than it already is. And if I fight it? His old confidence, now tinged with desperation, emerged. You'll lose twice, I replied simply. The evidence is comprehensive. And after today, I don't think you want your family witnessing more of your choices in court depositions. The fight drained from him. What about the house, our accounts? Talk to your lawyer, I said. Mine is very clear on what I'm entitled to. As I turned to leave, he called after me, his voice shaking. Where will you go? That's no longer your concern, I said, pausing at the door. Your father says you should pack whatever you need for a few days. After that, we can arrange times for you to collect the rest when I'm not here. Outside, the reunion had mostly dissolved. Most of the extended family had awkwardly left, with only the immediate family remaining. Emily waited on the porch swing, my car keys already in her hand. Dad's taking Robert to a hotel, she explained, her voice gentle. Mum's staying with Aunt Patricia tonight. I nodded, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline drained from my body. Thank you for standing by me today. You're still my sister, she said firmly, regardless of what happens with him. I looked up to see Eleanor approaching slowly from the garden, her eyes red but her posture firm. I braced myself for reproach, certain many mothers would defend their sons no matter the circumstances. But instead she embraced me tightly. I am so sorry, she whispered against my hair. So deeply sorry for what he's done to you. Her unconditional support broke something inside me, and for the first time since discovering Robert's betrayal, I allowed myself to truly cry. All the weeks of restraint, the calculated composure, finally gave way in her arms. When we finally pulled apart, she cupped my face gently. Whatever happens next, you will always be family to us. Remember that. As Emily drove me to her house, I made 3 phone calls. First, I called Diana to confirm the events of the day and the next steps. Then I reached out to the locksmith I had found, scheduling an appointment for the following morning. Finally, I called my school principal to request an additional personal day. With each call, another piece of my independent life began to fall into place. The Sarah who existed before Robert, confident, self-sufficient, uncompromised, was slowly emerging from the shadows of a marriage built on lies. That night, in Emily's spare bedroom, I opened my laptop and began systematically changing all the passwords Robert might know. Email, banking, social media, cloud storage. Each time I changed one, I felt another link in the chain of our shared life snap free. The last thing I did before sleep overtook me was delete his contact from my phone. Not block it, just delete it, erasing him as if he had never existed. Tomorrow would bring complications, negotiations, and the messy task of untangling 2 lives. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of my temporary refuge, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For the first time in 18 months, I wasn't sharing my husband with a ghost. The week following the reunion passed in a blur of practical steps that kept me focused, despite the emotional chaos. On Monday, I returned to the lake house, accompanied by the locksmith and Emily, who had taken a day off work to support me. We changed all the locks, reprogrammed the garage door opener, and reset the security system codes. The sound of new locks clicking into place felt like the punctuation marks at the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. "Are you sure you want to stay here?" Emily asked as we walked through the eerily silent house, devoid of the usual hum of Robert's morning news shows or evening phone calls. The space felt hollow, like an abandoned stage set. "For now," I replied, running my hand along the kitchen counter. "I need to reclaim this space before I decide whether to keep it or sell it." Diana called twice a day with updates. Robert had retained counsel, a high-profile divorce attorney known for representing wealthy businessmen. They had requested a private meeting to discuss terms amicably. Diana advised me to decline. "They're testing to see if you'll waver," she explained during our Wednesday check-in. "The evidence is solid. We proceed as planned." On Thursday morning, while organising financial documents in the Home Office, I found a small velvet ring box hidden in Robert's desk. Inside was a 2-carat diamond earring set I had never seen before. The receipt tucked inside showed a purchase date just 3 weeks earlier. Another gift meant for Melissa, bought with our joint funds. I photographed it as additional evidence and sealed it in an envelope for Diana. The first cracks in my composure appeared that evening when I found Robert's favourite coffee mug in the dishwasher. A simple object. A navy blue ceramic cup with "World's Best Realtor" printed on it. A gag gift from his first year in the business. I stood frozen in the kitchen, holding this relic of our domestic life, and suddenly, without warning, I hurled it against the wall. A primal scream tore from my throat as it shattered. I sank to the kitchen floor amidst the ceramic shards, finally allowing myself to fully feel the grief that had been overshadowed by righteous anger and careful planning. I wasn't just mourning a failed marriage. I was grieving the death of a future I had once believed in, the children we had planned, the retirement we had mapped out, the lifetime of shared memories that would never be. Emily found me an hour later during her daily check-in. Without a word, she helped me sweep up the broken pieces, then poured 2 glasses of wine. "It gets easier," she said, sitting beside me at the kitchen island. "Not today or tomorrow, but eventually." "Did you know?" I asked suddenly, my voice trembling. "Robert and Melissa, did anyone in the family suspect?" She looked down at her wineglass. "I saw them once," she admitted reluctantly, "at a restaurant in Arbor about 6 months ago." "They were in a corner booth holding hands across the table." She swallowed hard. "I convinced myself I was misinterpreting something, that it was a client meeting or something else, but I didn't want to believe it." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. "I should have," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "I think I was trying to protect everyone. You, him, our parents. It was cowardly." I reached for her hand. "It's not your burden to carry. It never was." The following Tuesday brought an unexpected development. I was grocery shopping, a strangely liberating experience, buying only the foods I enjoyed without considering Robert's preferences. As I turned my cart down the cereal aisle, I came face to face with Melissa Winters. We both froze, recognition immediate. She looked different from the confident professional I had seen at the hotel, smaller somehow, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. The grocery basket hanging from her arm contained a pint of ice cream, a bottle of wine, and a package of Oreos. The universal shopping list of heartbreak. "Sarah," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My carefully constructed composure threatened to crack. Here she was, the woman who had systematically dismantled my marriage, standing in the cereal aisle of my regular grocery store as if she belonged in my world. "You should shop elsewhere," I said coldly, turning my cart to leave. "Wait," she called after me. "Please, 5 minutes." Every instinct screamed for me to keep walking, to deny her the closure of explanation or apology, but a small voice inside urged me to understand her perspective, to find answers to the questions that had kept me awake at night. After a moment's hesitation, I wheeled my cart to a quieter corner near the pharmacy. "I ended it," she began without preamble. "After the call, after what happened at your reunion." "Congratulations on finally developing a conscience," I replied. the bitterness in my voice surprising even me. She flinched but continued. I deserved that. I deserve worse. She set her basket on the floor, her hands trembling slightly. He told me you were separated, living together for appearances but essentially divorced. And you believed that? She asked, despite seeing our wedding photos on his desk, despite the fact that I attended every company function as his wife. She admitted it, her gaze dropping to the floor. I wanted to believe it, she said softly. By the time I realized the truth, I was all ready. She trailed off. In love with him, I finished flatly. How convenient for your conscience. Not anymore, she replied quietly. The man I thought I knew doesn't exist. The way he tried to manipulate everyone after your confrontation. It was like watching a mask slip, revealing someone I didn't recognize. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Two women damaged by the same man in different ways. Did you know I was at your wedding? She finally asked. I found the photos, I confirmed. Table 7. You came with Tom. She nodded slowly. I barely knew Robert then. We met briefly at the rehearsal dinner. I never imagined. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that he's lost everything now. Not just you and his family's respect, but me too. Whatever game he was playing, he's left with nothing. I studied her face, searching for manipulation or hidden agendas, but found only exhaustion and regret. That brings me remarkably little comfort, I said honestly. I didn't expect it would, she replied. But you should know you're not alone in seeing through him now. She picked up her basket. I'm moving back to Chicago next month. You won't have to worry about running into me again. As she turned to leave, a question escaped me before I could reconsider. Was any of it real? What he said to you? What he felt? She paused, considering. I don't think Robert knows what real is anymore. He spent so long crafting different versions of himself for different people that I'm not sure even he knows which one is authentic. Her sad smile held no triumph, only shared recognition of painful truth. For what it's worth, I think what he felt for you in the beginning was as real as he's capable of. She walked away, disappearing around the corner, leaving me standing alone with my half-filled shopping cart and the strange, unexpected weight of pity, not for myself, but for both women who had built lives around a man who existed only in carefully crafted reflections. The divorce proceedings moved more swiftly than I had anticipated. Whether from shame, guilt, or simple pragmatism, Robert didn't contest the division of assets Diana proposed. The lake house was sold, and the proceeds, along with our investments and savings, were split. My meticulous documentation of his financial infidelity, the gifts, trips, and dinners purchased for Melissa with our joint funds, resulted in a settlement that slightly favored me, a small victory that felt more symbolic than significant. I signed the final papers 6 months after the reunion, in Diana's sun-drenched office surrounded by thriving plants. The moment should have felt momentous, but as I watched my signature dry on the document, I felt only a quiet acknowledgement of an ending long overdue. Congratulations, Diana said, sliding the papers into a folder. You're officially divorced. Thank you, I replied, surprising myself with a genuine smile. For everything. What's next for you? She asked, removing her reading glasses. It was a question I'd been considering deeply. The settlement had left me financially secure with enough to start over however I chose. The school year had ended, and for the first time in my adult life, I had no obligations to anyone but myself. I'm not sure yet, I admitted, but I'm looking forward to finding out. That evening, I invited Emily and my sister Kate over to my new apartment. It was a bright, airy space overlooking the river, with walls painted in shades of blue and green. We opened a bottle of champagne, not to celebrate the end of my marriage, but to toast the beginning of whatever came next. To Sarah 2.0, Kate declared, raising her glass. stronger, wiser, and finally free to become whoever she wants. It was a nice sentiment, but the reality of rebuilding proved more complicated. My identity had been so thoroughly entwined with Robert's that I sometimes caught myself making decisions based on his preferences, reaching for wines he would have chosen, avoiding restaurants he disliked, second-guessing career moves through the lens of what would have fit our shared life. I started small. I enrolled in a photography class I'd always wanted to take but had postponed because it conflicted with Robert's bowling league nights. I let my hair grow longer, no longer maintaining the shoulder-length cut he had preferred. I adopted a rescue cat, a scraggly orange tabby with a crooked tail, despite Robert's lifelong insistence that he was allergic. "What's his name?" the shelter volunteer asked as I completed the adoption paperwork. I studied the cat's defiant green eyes, his resilient spirit despite whatever hardships had brought him to the shelter. "Fix," I decided. "His name is Phoenix." Summer turned to fall, and with it came an unexpected opportunity. The principal at my school approached me about developing a special arts-integrated curriculum for struggling readers, a project that would combine my teaching experience with my newfound passion for photography and visual storytelling. "It would mean reducing your classroom hours," she explained. "More administrative work, curriculum development, but I think you'd be perfect for it." Before Robert, I would have jumped at the chance. During our marriage, I had downplayed my career ambitions, focusing instead on creating the perfect home environment to support his success. Now I said yes without hesitation. The project consumed my fall and winter in the best possible way. I worked long hours, collaborating with art teachers and literacy specialists, developing a program that used visual narrative to engage students who struggled with traditional text. When we launched a pilot class in January, watching disengaged students suddenly find their voices through photography and storytelling felt like witnessing small miracles daily. Eleanor called regularly. Our relationship evolved from in-law cordiality to genuine friendship. William sent thoughtful birthday and Christmas gifts. Emily remained my strongest ally. Sunday brunches at her house became a cherished ritual. Robert's family had chosen to keep me in their lives, a decision that both touched and occasionally complicated my healing process. "Have you heard from him?" Eleanor asked carefully during one of our monthly phone calls, nearly 10 months after the divorce. "No," I answered truthfully, "not directly." Through mutual connections, I knew the broad outlines of his life. He had moved to Chicago, presumably following Melissa, though whether they had reconciled remained unclear. His career continued successfully. Betrayal, it seemed, was no impediment to selling luxury real estate. "It's probably better that way," Eleanor acknowledged. "But I want you to know that whatever happens with Robert, you'll always be family to us." As the one-year anniversary of the reunion approached, I found myself surprisingly calm. The sharp edges of betrayal had dulled to a manageable ache, present but no longer debilitating. My new life had taken shape around me, a career with fresh purpose, a home that reflected only my tastes, friendships deepened by authenticity rather than social convenience. On the actual anniversary, I took a personal day and drove alone to Lake Michigan. The spring air carried a hint of warmth as I walked along the shoreline, watching waves crash against the sand. I found a quiet spot on a dune and retrieved a small box from my bag. Inside was the letter I had written to Robert the night before the reunion. Words never delivered but preserved as a time capsule of raw emotion. I reread it once, acknowledging the pain and anger of that moment without being consumed by it. Then, I tore it into tiny pieces, letting the wind carry them out over the water, watching as they disappeared into the vastness of the lake. My phone buzzed with a notification, a reminder about tomorrow's curriculum planning meeting. Real life, my new life, waiting for me beyond this moment of ceremonial closure. I lingered a while longer, savouring the sense of completion before finally turning back toward the parking lot. As I reached my car, my phone rang, an unknown Chicago number. My heart skipped, then steadied as I silenced the call without answering. Whatever Robert might want to say a year later held no interest for me. There was nothing left to discuss, no loose ends requiring resolution. I sent a quick text to Emily. "Still on for dinner tonight?" "Absolutely, Anne," came her immediate reply. "The girls are excited to see their favourite aunt." I smiled, sliding behind the wheel. The rear-view mirror offered a glimpse of the lake behind me, beautiful but receding as I drove forward. 5 years of marriage had taught me much about love, commitment, and betrayal. But this year of rebuilding had taught me something far more valuable: the quiet strength of choosing myself day after day without apology or compromise. The road ahead curved through spring-green forests, leading away from the water and toward the city, toward dinner with Emily's daughters, toward next week's curriculum presentation, toward 1,000 small moments that would form the mosaic of my continuing story. Whatever chapter came next would be written entirely in my own hand, shaped by my own choices, independent of the shadow Robert had once cast across my life. I turned up the radio, opened the windows to the spring air and drove on, not toward any specific destination, but simply forward. Have you ever been blindsided by a truth you never saw coming? A truth that forces you to question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you? This is the story of betrayal, not just from the man I loved, but from a life I had built on trust, only to watch it crumble in an instant. I never imagined that the greatest challenge I would face wasn't in loving someone, but in learning how to walk away from them. This is the story of how I discovered the truth, how I faced the shock, and how I ultimately found the strength to choose myself over everything else. Welcome to my journey. During our family reunion, an unexpected call came through on my husband's phone. As it rang on speaker, a voice softly said, "I can't stop thinking about you." Without hesitation, I picked up the phone and smiled. "Why don't you come over?" I suggested. "It's the perfect time. I was just about to share some exciting news with everyone. I found your messages, and I've already contacted a lawyer." The room froze. I never intended to look at Robert's phone that night. 5 years of marriage had built a foundation of trust, or so I thought. The steam from his shower still lingered on the bathroom mirror as I folded laundry on our bed. The mundane rhythm of domestic life played out like any other Tuesday. Then his phone lit up on the nightstand, a single notification cutting through the dimness of our bedroom. "Miss the way you touched me last night. Can't wait until next week." My hands froze mid-fold on one of his button-down shirts. The preview text glowed accusingly from the lock screen. Robert had been on a business trip last night, a regular occurrence with his real estate development firm. I set down the shirt with deliberate care, as if the fabric had suddenly become fragile. Before we continue with Sarah's journey, I want to pause for a moment. If you've ever felt that knowing suspicion, that feeling something wasn't quite right, or admired someone who found their strength after betrayal, this story will resonate with you. Please consider subscribing. It's completely free and connects you with others who appreciate raw tales of reclaiming personal power. Now, let's dive back in. I picked up his phone, telling myself there must be some explanation. Perhaps some work colleague making an inappropriate joke, a text meant for someone else. Anything but what my instincts were screaming at me. But the message disappeared as the screen timed out, and I placed the phone back exactly as I had found it, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. When Robert emerged from the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, I kept folding clothes with mechanical precision. He noticed nothing unusual as he checked his phone. His face briefly illuminated by the screen's glow, I watched from the corner of my eye as his expression softened into a small smile before he typed a quick response. That smile, I thought, had belonged only to me. "Everything okay?" he asked, slipping on his pajama bottoms. "Fine," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just tired." Sleep never came that night. I lay beside him, listening to the even rhythm of his breathing while my mind constructed and discarded 100 different scenarios. By morning, one thought crystallized through the fog of shock. I needed proof. For 3 days, I maintained our normal routine: breakfast together before work, texts throughout the day, dinner and TV in the evening. I played the role of the contented wife while tracking his late-night phone habits and noting the passcode he entered when he thought I wasn't watching. On Friday, when he left his phone to grab coffee from the kitchen, I made my move. The message thread was there under a contact simply labelled M. Dozens of exchanges stretched back 4 months. Intimate details, meeting arrangements, photos I couldn't bring myself to open. I took screenshots of the most damning evidence and sent them to my own private email before carefully backing out of the apps, leaving everything as I'd found it. The following Thursday, Robert packed for another overnight client meeting in Detroit. I kissed him goodbye at the door, my lips curving into the same trusting smile I'd perfected over our years together. "Drive safely," I said, like always. "I'll call you when I get to the hotel," he promised, like always. 20 minutes later, I was in my own car, following his familiar silver Audi at a careful distance. I'd never tailed anyone before, but I'd watched enough crime shows to maintain 3 cars between us, switching lanes periodically to avoid detection. The knot in my stomach tightened as he passed the exit for downtown Detroit, continuing another 15 miles to a boutique hotel in Birmingham, an upscale suburb we'd visited together for anniversary dinners. I parked across the street, watching as he checked in with the casual confidence of a regular guest. 40 minutes later, a sleek black Mercedes pulled into the lot. From it emerged a tall, blonde woman in a fitted business suit whom I recognized immediately, Melissa Winters, the new agent at his firm. I'd met her at the company Christmas party just 3 months ago, where Robert had introduced us with his hand resting casually on my lower back. My phone captured their embrace in the lobby, too intimate for colleagues, too familiar for a first encounter. Something inside me cracked as they walked toward the elevator, his hand finding the small of her back in the exact same way it had once guided me. That weekend, while Robert golfed with clients, I created an encrypted folder on my cloud drive. I named it Home Renovation Ideas, knowing he'd never bother to look inside. Into it went the screenshots, the photos from the hotel, and a document where I began detailing dates, inconsistencies in his stories, and unexplained expenses I found while combing through our joint accounts. $340 at Tiffany's in February, no jewelry for Valentine's Day. $180 at Giovanni's, an intimate Italian place, on a night he claimed to be at a business dinner at the steakhouse downtown. 3 separate gas receipts from stations along the route to Birmingham when he should have been in Detroit. Each new piece of evidence was another fracture in the image of our perfect marriage. The beautiful home in the suburbs, the plans for children next year, the vacations we'd meticulously saved for. I had built my entire identity around being Robert's wife, and now that foundation was crumbling beneath my feet. On our 5th wedding anniversary, while we drank champagne at the restaurant where he'd proposed, I made my decision. The waiter had just brought our dessert, chocolate soufflé with 2 spoons, when Robert's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, made a poor excuse about checking work emails, and typed a quick response. I recognized the smile he tried to hide, the same one I'd seen that first night after the shower. "Is everything okay at the office?" I asked innocently. "Just Johnson being anxious about the Westbrook property," he lied smoothly, sliding his phone back into his jacket pocket. "Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow." That's when I knew I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. A hasty confrontation would give him time to hide assets, delete evidence, and spin stories to our friends and family. Instead, I would be methodical, calculated. I would gather irrefutable proof and prepare myself legally before pulling the trigger. The perfect opportunity would present itself, and when it did, I would be ready. The morning after our anniversary dinner, I called in sick to my job at the elementary school for the first time in 3 years. As a 5th grade teacher, I prided myself on my reliability, My students needed consistency. But today, I needed answers more than my students needed their spelling lesson. I waited until Robert backed his Audi out of the driveway, his travel mug of coffee in hand, and his goodbye kiss still cool against my cheek. Then, I began my real work. Our home office had always been Robert's domain. Though we technically shared the space, his large mahogany desk dominated the room while my small writing table sat in the corner. A fitting metaphor for our marriage, I now realized. His desk drawers weren't locked. Why would they be? Trust had never been questioned between us. The first two drawers contained ordinary office supplies, folders of home maintenance records, and our tax returns. The bottom drawer stuck slightly, requiring an extra tug. Inside, beneath hanging files of mundane documents, I found a small burgundy folder tucked at the very back. My hands shook as I pulled it out. Inside were receipts, dozens of them, all meticulously organized by date. Dinner for two at Morton's, $312. A weekend at the Townsend Hotel, where he'd supposedly been for a real estate conference, $760. A gold bracelet from Tiffany's, $1,200. My birthday had come and gone in March, with only a bouquet of flowers and a dinner I cooked myself. Each receipt felt like a snapshot, a glimpse into the life he'd been living outside our marriage. I spread them across the desk, arranging them chronologically, and a clear pattern emerged. Every third Thursday, sometimes spilling into Friday morning, occasionally a Tuesday evening. Always the same hotel, usually the same restaurant. Next, I logged into our bank website. Having always managed our household finances, I knew all the passwords. While I'd noticed the charges before, I'd never scrutinized them, trusting Robert's explanations about client dinners and professional seminars. Now, I downloaded 6 months of credit card statements and highlighted every charge that aligned with the pattern I'd uncovered. The office felt smaller with each new discovery, the walls seeming to close in. I moved to the dining room table, spreading my growing collection of evidence. The same organizational skills I used as a teacher now served a different purpose, creating a detailed spreadsheet of dates, times, locations, and amounts. By noon, I had charted 8 months of regular meetings. Their relationship had started shortly after Melissa joined his firm, and I still needed more. I needed to hear it for myself. That evening, I suggested we clean out the spare bedroom to prepare it for future plans. Robert didn't question my sudden nesting instinct. We'd been talking about starting a family for months. Together, we rearranged furniture, bringing in a desk from the basement to create a temporary workspace where I might grade papers. "The light is better," I explained. The truth was, the spare room shared a wall with our bedroom. That night, after installing a voice recording app on my phone, I left it hidden between books on the new desk before joining Robert for our usual evening routine. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight," I told him. "I have that slight headache again, and I don't want to disturb you if I can't sleep." His concern seemed genuine as he brought me pain relievers and a glass of water. Once alone, I waited, listening to the familiar sounds of our home settling for the night. Around 11:30, I heard it, the low murmur of Robert's voice through the wall. The recording captured everything, his whispered endearments, plans for their next meeting, complaints about attending my cousin's wedding that weekend. "I'd rather be with you," he told her, his voice tender in a way it hadn't been with me in months. Sleep eluded me as I listened to the recording 3 times, each word another nail in the coffin of our marriage. By morning, my decision was made. This wasn't a one-time mistake, this was a calculated, ongoing betrayal. The next day, I called an attorney, not our family lawyer, who had handled our house purchase and wills, but Diana Moore, a name I'd heard from a colleague who'd gone through a brutal divorce last year. Diana's office was nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of dark wood and leather, her space was filled with plants and natural light. The woman herself, with her silver-streaked bob and bright blue reading glasses perched on her nose, projected calm competence rather than aggressive litigation. "Tell me everything," she said after introductions, And don't leave anything out. The surprises hurt most in court. For an hour, I laid out everything I had discovered, while she took notes on a yellow legal pad. She asked pointed questions about our finances, property, and the evidence I'd collected. Michigan is a no-fault divorce state, Diana explained when I finished. But that doesn't mean evidence of infidelity is irrelevant. It can influence property division, especially if he's spent substantial marital assets on this relationship. She handed me a folder with information about divorce proceedings and a checklist of documents to gather. Start securing copies of all financial records, investment accounts, retirement funds, property deeds, insurance policies. Establish your own bank account if you don't already have one. She slid her business card across the desk. And Sarah, she added, her tone shifting slightly, don't tip your hand too early. The element of surprise is sometimes our best advantage. I nodded, feeling more in control than I had in weeks. Diana's words echoed in my mind as I drove home. I wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. I was building a case. For the first time since discovering that text message, I felt something beyond pain and betrayal. I felt purpose. Robert would be out of town again next Thursday. I marked the date on my calendar and began planning my next move. Thursday arrived with relentless spring rain, matching my mood. I'd planned this day meticulously, called in a personal day at school, and told Robert I had a dentist appointment followed by lunch with my sister. He kissed me goodbye, reminding me he'd be home late due to a client dinner. Another lie to add to my growing collection. I waited 30 minutes after he left, then drove to Carson Reale's gleaming office building downtown. The rain provided perfect cover. Umbrella tilted forward, raincoat collar up. I was just another anonymous visitor seeking shelter from the downpour. The reception area buzzed with morning activity as agents filtered in, shaking off umbrellas and clutching coffee cups. I'm looking for Melissa Winters, I told the receptionist, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. I'm interested in listing my property. Miss Winters is in a morning meeting. Would you like to leave your information? Actually, I'll wait, I replied, settling into a chair with a clear view of the office floor. Through the glass partitions, I could see Robert in the conference room, standing at a whiteboard. The quarterly sales meeting he'd mentioned last week. 20 minutes later, the meeting broke up. Agents spilled out into the main floor, Robert among them, laughing with a tall, blonde woman, Melissa Winters. I'd seen her at the hotel and at last year's Christmas party, but now I studied her with new eyes. Designer suit, perfect manicure, and conspicuously absent wedding ring. She touched Robert's arm as they talked. The gesture was casual, but intimate. Too intimate. I slipped out before either could spot me. My reconnaissance mission complete. Back in my car, I pulled up the company website on my phone, navigating to the Our Team page. Melissa's professional biography revealed she had joined the firm 18 months ago after relocating from Chicago. The timeline matched perfectly with when Robert's behavior had begun to change. At home, I opened our wedding album, a beautiful leather-bound book I hadn't looked at in months. I flipped through reception photos, scanning faces in the background, looking. I found her, Melissa Winters, a name I hadn't thought about in years. There she was, smiling in a group photo at table 7, 5 years younger with darker hair but undeniably her, sitting next to Robert's college roommate Tom. She'd been at our wedding, witnessed our vows, eaten our food, and then quietly worked to destroy everything those vows stood for. The betrayal cut deeper than I had anticipated. This wasn't just about sex or emotional connection, it was personal. It was someone who had seen our happiness and decided to target it. Or was Robert the one who started it all? The pit in my stomach grew heavier with each unanswered question. I needed to know more. Tom might have some insight. He and Robert still played basketball together every month. I quickly typed a text, keeping it casual. Hey, Tom. I'm putting together a surprise for Robert's birthday. Didn't you bring a friend to our wedding? Melissa something. Does she still live around here? An hour later, his response came. Melissa Winters. Yeah, she's actually working with Rob now. Small world, right? They've gotten pretty close. She still asks about Rob whenever I see her. Pretty close. The words jumped out at me, mocking my naivety. How many people knew? How many friends had chosen loyalty to Robert over basic human decency? I turned to technology for answers. Robert wasn't tech-savvy. He often relied on me to help sync devices or back up photos. This carelessness became my advantage. In a subfolder labeled Work Conference San Diego, I found the photos that were never meant for my eyes. Robert and Melissa on a beach at sunset. Intimate dinner photos with wine glasses raised in toast. A selfie of them kissing on a hotel balcony with the ocean behind them. The timestamp was 3 months ago, during his supposed regional sales conference, but the background clearly showed the Coronado Beach Resort, definitely not the downtown Marriott where the conference was supposed to have been held. I forwarded the images to my secure email, my hands shaking. Each new discovery was both a win for my case and another wound to my heart. The next day, I ran into Jessica, another agent from Carson Realty, at the grocery store. We'd been friendly at company events, but we weren't close. I casually mentioned that I was thinking of surprising Robert at the office for lunch. Oh, Fridays are his off-site days with Melissa, she replied, distracted as she picked through avocados. They usually work from that coffee shop on Maple. Then her expression shifted as she realized what she'd let slip. I mean, they have client meetings. How long has that been their routine? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Jessica seemed uncomfortable. Maybe ask Robert. I don't want to get in the middle of it. Of course, I said with a smile. Just curious about his schedule. That evening I received a text from Jessica. I'm sorry about earlier. It felt wrong not to say something. Everyone at the office knows about them. It's been going on for at least a year. Robert claimed you two had an understanding. I should have said something sooner. An understanding. The audacity of his lie hit me hard. Not only had he betrayed me, but he had painted a narrative where I was complicit in my own humiliation. Back at my laptop, I created a new document in my evidence folder. Timeline of betrayal. I meticulously laid out every date, location, witness account, and piece of evidence, 18 months of deception in cold, hard facts. The pattern was clear. What started as occasional meetings had grown into regular rendezvous, bolder and more frequent. Diana had advised me to gather comprehensive evidence, and now I had it. Financial records, photographs, witness statements, and a detailed timeline. The case was solid. But something held me back from calling her. The final piece was still missing, the perfect moment to reveal the truth. A moment when Robert would have no excuses, no way to manipulate the narrative. The answer came when I checked our shared calendar. In 2 weeks, the annual Carson family reunion at our lake house would take place. Robert's parents, siblings, cousins, everyone who mattered to him would be there. I picked up my phone and called Diana. I'm ready to proceed, I said, but I need your advice on timing. The family reunion is perfect, Diana's calm voice said through the phone. But are you absolutely sure you want to do it so publicly? I stood by the kitchen window, looking out at the lake that had convinced us to buy this house 3 years ago. The water rippled peacefully in the afternoon sunlight. Yes, I replied without hesitation. He humiliated me in front of his entire office. Let him face the consequences in front of his family. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and drafted an email to Robert's mother, Eleanor. The annual Carson family reunion had rotated between homes for generations. This year, Robert's brother was struggling to host due to a new baby and renovation delays. I offered to host at the lake house. We'd be happy to host, I wrote warmly. The weather should be perfect, and we haven't had everyone over since we finished the deck expansion. Eleanor's enthusiastic acceptance came within the hour, along with offers to help coordinate. Robert was thrilled when I told him that evening, kissing me on the cheek and calling me the perfect wife. I smiled, leaning into his embrace, trying not to let him feel how rigid my body had become under his touch. The next 2 weeks were a mix of strategic planning and emotional compartmentalization. By day, I was the devoted wife preparing to welcome her extended family, ordering supplies, planning menus, and coordinating sleeping arrangements for out-of-town guests. By night, I methodically prepared for the aftermath. I visited our bank one quiet Tuesday morning and requested access to our safe deposit box. I added my grandmother's jewelry and the deed to the small cabin in northern Michigan I had inherited before our marriage. Then I opened a new box in my name alone, securing copies of our financial records, my evidence folder, and a set of house and car keys. That same afternoon, I opened a separate checking account at a different bank, transferring just enough from my personal savings to cover immediate expenses after the fallout, but not so much that Robert could claim financial impropriety. He didn't ask questions about the new bank statement. Just organising my classroom supply fund, I explained. He didn't press further, his attention already drifting to his phone, where Melissa had undoubtedly texted him. The guest list for the reunion was crucial. Eleanor and William, Robert's parents, were non-negotiable. They had always treated me like a daughter, and their presence would ensure maximum impact. His brother James and sister-in-law Caitlin, with their new baby, would provide the wholesome family contrast. His sister Emily, always my strongest ally in the family, would be crucial support. Various aunts, uncles and cousins completed the tableau of witnesses. 10 days before the reunion, I stood in our walk-in closet, mentally dividing our possessions. The cashmere sweaters he'd given me for Christmas, did I even want them anymore? The framed photos throughout the house, which ones would I take when this was over? I discreetly removed my most treasured possessions, taking a few items each day and storing them in the trunk of my car before transferring them to my sister's garage. Spring cleaning, I told Robert when he noticed missing items. Just decluttering before everyone arrives. Each night after he fell asleep, I practiced in the bathroom mirror, rehearsing the exact words I would say, the precise tone, not hysterical, not bitter, but calm and resolute. I ran through different scenarios. If he denied everything, if he tried to turn the family against me, if he became angry. I prepared for every possibility, except the one I feared most. When the moment came, my resolve would crumble under the weight of 5 years of love and shared dreams. A week before the reunion, I visited the lake house alone, ostensibly to begin preparations. In reality, I needed time in the space to mentally block out how the scene would unfold. I stood in the great room, mapping the likely positions of family members, considering sightlines and acoustics. Where would Robert be standing? Where should I position myself for maximum control of the situation? It was theatrical direction for the most important performance of my life. I rehung family photos that suddenly felt like props. Robert and me on our honeymoon in Bali, the whole Carson clan at last year's reunion, the professional portrait we'd taken for our Christmas card. Behind each smiling image lay 1,000 moments of genuine happiness, which now felt contaminated. Had he been thinking of her even then? Had any of it been real? 3 days before the event, I met with Diana again, reviewing our strategy for the immediate aftermath. "Have a backpack," she advised. "Once it happens, you'll want space from each other. Do you have somewhere to stay?" "My sister's," I confirmed. "She's prepared the guest room." "Good. And you've secured your important documents?" I nodded, patting my purse where copies of our marriage certificate, tax returns and property deeds now resided alongside my driver's license and credit cards. "I want to make sure you remember this is going to be emotionally taxing," Diana said, her typically brisk tone softening. "No matter how prepared you are, when the moment comes, it will hurt. Are you absolutely sure this is how you want to handle it?" For a moment, doubt crept in. Would a private confrontation be kinder, more dignified? Then I remembered Jessica's text. Robert claimed you two had an understanding. The public humiliation he'd already subjected me to, while painting himself as the reasonable husband in an open marriage. I'm sure, I said firmly. He doesn't deserve privacy or dignity, not anymore. The day before the reunion, I made one final preparation. I wrote a letter to Robert, sealing it in an envelope to give him afterward. Not a letter of explanation, he deserved none, but a letter of goodbye to the man I had thought he was, to the life I had believed we shared. Writing it was cathartic, releasing emotions I couldn't afford to express during tomorrow's calculated confrontation. That night, Robert wrapped his arms around me in bed, whispering how grateful he was for handling the reunion preparations, how lucky he felt to have me. I lay still in his embrace, my body a perfect alabaster statue of loyalty, while inside, a storm gathered strength. Tomorrow the stage would be set, the actors would take their places, and the performance of a lifetime would begin. The morning of the reunion dawned with perfect blue skies, the kind of late spring day that had sold us on the lake house in the first place. I woke before Robert, sliding quietly from the bed to begin preparations with a calm I didn't truly feel. By the time he joined me in the kitchen, I was arranging pastries on my grandmother's antique serving tray. "You didn't have to let me sleep in," he said, kissing my cheek. "I could have helped." I smiled, the expression now so practiced it felt like a mask I could slip on and off at will. "You'll have plenty to do once everyone arrives. Your mother texted, they're about 30 minutes out." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. I moved through our home with mechanical efficiency, setting out drinks, arranging furniture on the deck, placing flowers in strategic locations. Robert manned the grill, occasionally catching my eye to smile or wink conspiratorially, as if we were teammates hosting this gathering rather than performers in the final act of our marriage. Eleanor arrived first with William, embracing me with genuine affection. "The place looks beautiful, Sarah," she exclaimed, handing me a homemade blueberry pie. "You've outdone yourself." "You know I love hosting," I replied, accepting the pie with a warm smile that didn't reach my eyes. Had she noticed the slight tremor in my hands? If so, she attributed it to the excitement of the day rather than the emotional tempest brewing inside me. By noon, our property was teeming with Carson family members, 36 in total, from Robert's 90-year-old grandmother to his cousin's newborn daughter. They sprawled across the deck and lawn, voices mingling with laughter and the gentle lapping of lake water against our private dock. I moved among them with practiced grace, refilling drinks, directing people to food, engaging in small talk while maintaining emotional distance. "Sarah, this potato salad is divine," Robert's Aunt Margaret declared, helping herself to seconds. "You simply must share the recipe." "Family secret," I responded with a wink, knowing I'd never speak to this woman again after today. At 2 o'clock, Robert approached me near the beverage table, wiping sweat from his brow. "James is asking about the fishing gear. Do we still have those extra rods in the garage? Check the storage bin near the kayaks," I instructed, watching as he pulled his phone from his pocket to check the time. "Thanks. Can you make sure Mum knows the burgers will be ready in 20 minutes? He set his phone down on the small wicker table beside me and headed toward the garage, pausing to chat with various relatives along the way. I stared at the phone, its black screen innocuous against the white tablecloth. For a moment, I considered the cosmic timing. Was this opportunity mere coincidence, or had the universe finally aligned to deliver justice? Either way, I wasn't about to squander the moment. I continued arranging drink pitchers, keeping one eye on the abandoned phone. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Robert became engrossed in a conversation with his brother and cousin near the dock, gesturing animatedly about something involving fishing lures. His phone remained forgotten. The first vibration was subtle. I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching so intently. The screen illuminated with an unsaved number. Just digits, without a name. I glanced toward Robert, still deeply engaged in conversation, a good 50 yards away. The call ended. The screen went dark. 2 minutes later, it vibrated again. Same number. Again, I let it ring through to voicemail. I picked up my glass of lemonade, taking a slow sip while maintaining my position near the forgotten device. Around me, the reunion continued in full swing. Eleanor was organising an impromptu group photo, children running and chasing each other across the lawn, and William was telling his legendary college football stories to anyone who would listen. The third call came just as I was thinking about stepping away from my post. The same number again. This time, I answered the phone, holding it in my palm as it vibrated persistently. Robert remained unaware, now helping his brother launch a kayak into the lake. When the screen went dark again, a flicker of doubt crossed my mind. Was I really prepared for what was about to come? The thought vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment. I was more than ready. The fourth call came less than a minute later. This time I didn't hesitate. I swiped to answer, raising the phone to my ear without a word. Robert was still busy, his focus on the kayak. Melissa's voice came through the speaker, breathy and intimate. I know you're busy with family stuff, but I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was amazing. At that moment, an unexpected calm settled over me. All the anxiety, the rehearsals, the uncertainty, everything converged into perfect clarity. I pressed the speaker button, ensuring her voice carried for everyone to hear. "Why don't you come over?" I suggested, my voice steady and clear. Heads turned toward me, conversations pausing mid-sentence. It was the perfect moment. Robert looked up from across the yard, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition, then horror, all in the span of seconds. "I found your messages," I continued, projecting my voice across the suddenly silent gathering. "And I've already contacted a lawyer." I could hear Melissa's sharp intake of breath through the speaker. "Who is this?" she demanded, though I knew she already knew. "This is Sarah, Robert's wife," I said, emphasizing the last word. Robert abandoned the kayak and started walking rapidly toward me. "We're having our family reunion today," I continued, my voice still carrying. "Everyone's here, his parents, siblings, cousins, and now they all know about you too." "Oh my God," Melissa whispered. "Save it," I interrupted. "I've seen the photos from San Diego. I know you were at our wedding. I know everything." Robert reached me, his face drained of colour. "Sarah, please," he said, reaching for the phone. "Give me the phone." I held it just out of his reach, maintaining eye contact. "Why?" I asked. "So you can explain how this is all a misunderstanding? How I've got it all wrong?" Turning back to the phone, I spoke to Melissa. "Robert told his entire office that we had an understanding. Did he tell you that too?" The silence that followed was all the answer I needed. William and Eleanor stood frozen by the picnic table, their faces mirroring the shock that had gripped the entire gathering. Even the children who had been playing had stopped, sensing the dramatic shift in atmosphere. I handed the phone to Robert, who took it with trembling fingers. "She's all yours now," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I'm certainly not." As I turned and walked away, I heard Melissa's voice still emanating from the speaker. "Robert, Robert, what's happening?" Behind me, the perfect family reunion unraveled into chaos, exactly as I had planned. I stood in the center of the stunned silence, feeling strangely detached from the turmoil unfolding around me. Robert stared at the phone in his hand, as if it were a venomous snake. Melissa's voice still faintly audible. "Hang up," I said quietly. His eyes met mine, pleading. "Sarah, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the yard. 18 months, Robert, hotel receipts, jewelry she wore that was meant for me, vacations disguised as business trips. What exactly is there to explain? Finally, Robert pressed the end call button, silencing Melissa mid-sentence. The sudden absence of her voice made the moment more intense, forcing everyone's attention onto the confrontation. Eleanor broke from her frozen position by the picnic table, walking toward us with uncertain steps. "Robert, what is Sarah talking about?" she asked, her voice shaky. Robert's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. His usual smooth confidence evaporated entirely. For a man who sold multi-million-dollar properties with ease, he now couldn't form a coherent sentence. "Go ahead," I encouraged, crossing my arms. "Tell your mother about Melissa. Tell her how you've been sleeping with her for over a year while pretending to be on business trips. Tell her how you told everyone at your office that we had an open marriage to justify your behavior." William approached slowly, his weathered hand gripping Eleanor's shoulder, perhaps for support or to steady himself. His face had aged 10 years in 10 minutes, deep lines etched around his mouth as he stared at his son. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The anguish in his voice pierced Robert's shock. "Dad, it's complicated," he muttered, but his father cut him off. "It's a yes or no question." Robert searched wildly for an ally, his eyes flicking between the faces of his family. His brother James, his sister-in-law Caitlin, cousins, aunts, and uncles, all staring at him in disbelief. Finally he muttered, "Yes." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. "But it's not what you think. Things between Sarah and me haven't been right for a long time." "That's news to me," I interrupted. "But then I'm not the one who's been living a double life." Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, a small, wounded sound escaping her. She had always been proud of her close relationship with me, often bragging to friends about how lucky her son was to have found such a perfect match. Now her illusions were shattering alongside mine. "I trusted you," she said to Robert, tears welling in her eyes. "We all did." Robert reached for her hand. "Mom, please." She stepped back, avoiding his touch. The rejection, though small, was devastating. In a matter of seconds, he had lost not just a wife, but a mother's unconditional approval. His sister Emily pushed through the crowd, placing herself between Robert and me. "How dare you?" she hissed at her brother. "After everything Sarah has done for this family." His cousin Tyler snorted from near the grill. "Always thought you were too slick for your own good, Rob. Guess we know where all those client dinners really went." Murmurs began to rise, a rising tide of judgment and disappointment sweeping through the gathered family. Robert stood alone at the centre, the isolation forming around him like a physical barrier. "Everyone, please," he said finally, raising his voice. "This is between Sarah and me. It's a private matter." "Is it?" I challenged. "When you made it public to your entire office? When you humiliated me behind my back? When you brought Melissa to our wedding?" That last revelation sent another wave of shocked whispers through the gathering. Robert looked genuinely surprised. "What are you talking about?" "Table 7, I said coldly. "Check the wedding album. She was Tom's +1. She sat 15 feet away from us while we exchanged vows." Something inside William seemed to crack. He slammed his palm against the picnic table with unexpected force, causing plates to jump and glasses to topple. "Enough!" he shouted, his face flushed with anger. "You bring another woman to your own wedding and then you sleep with her behind your wife's back? Who raised you to behave this way? Because it certainly wasn't your mother and me." Robert flinched, as if struck. In his entire life, I had never seen his father raise his voice to him. William had always been Robert's greatest champion, defending every decision, celebrating every success. That unwavering support had vanished in an instant. "Dad," Robert began, but William cut him off. "Don't dad me," William snapped. "Your grandfather built this family on integrity, on keeping your word, on honouring your commitments." His voice broke slightly. "He would be ashamed to see what you've done." Eleanor began to cry openly now, supported by Robert's Aunt Patricia. James approached his brother, speaking in a voice low enough only for those nearby to hear. "How could you do this to her? To all of us?" I watched as the family closed ranks, not around Robert as they always had, but around me. Emily's arms slipped around my waist. Caitlin approached with the baby, offering silent support with her presence. Even Tyler's wife Jessica, whom I had only met twice before, moved to stand beside me. Robert looked around, the weight of disapproval pressing down on him as the realization hit. His careful compartmentalization of his two lives had crumbled. He was exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone. "Sarah," he said, his voice wavering, "can we please talk privately?" I shook my head slowly. "I've given you 5 years of privacy, Robert. I think we're beyond that now." I pulled a folded document from my pocket. "This is the name and number of my attorney. She's expecting your call." His hand trembled as he took the paper. The full weight of reality began to sink in. "You're really doing this?" I corrected him gently. "I'm just ending it." The finality in my voice echoed through the gathering. Whatever the family had expected from this reunion, laughter, reminiscing, bonding, it had all been replaced by the public collapse of a marriage many had once considered ideal. The ripple of the implosion was permanent, changing the dynamic of the Carson family forever. As I turned to walk toward the house with Emily still by my side, I heard William's voice behind me. "Robert, get your things. You won't be staying here tonight." For the first time in Robert's life, he wasn't the favored son. Emily followed me into the house, closing the French doors behind us to muffle the commotion still unfolding outside. The sudden silence felt surreal after the intensity of what had just happened. We stood for a moment in the kitchen, the reunion's collapse unfolding outside the windows. "I knew something was wrong," Emily said quietly, filling a glass with water and pressing it into my hands. "You've seemed different these past few months, but I never imagined this." I took a sip, my throat dry from the adrenaline. "How long have you known?" 3 weeks, I replied, setting the glass down on the counter. But looking back, I think part of me suspected something much longer. I just didn't want to see it. Emily's eyes widened. 3 weeks, and you still hosted this reunion? Planned all of this? She gestured to the house, the pristine decorations, the food. A small, grim smile crossed my face. I wanted witnesses. I wanted his family to see who he really is. Outside, Robert was gesturing frantically while William shook his head, firm and resolute. Eleanor sat at the picnic table, her arm around Patricia's shoulders. Most of the extended family had pulled back, forming uncomfortable clusters, unsure whether to stay or go. "What happens now?" Emily asked. "Now," I said, pulling a small overnight bag from the pantry where I'd hidden it earlier that morning. "I finish what I started." I moved purposefully through the house, gathering the items I'd mentally catalogued weeks ago. My laptop, the folder with financial documents from my desk, the small jewellery box containing my grandmother's pearls, and the framed photo of my parents on their 30th anniversary, the only family picture I still wanted from our curated collection. Emily followed quietly behind me, watching silently as I methodically collected the pieces of my life. When I reached the master bedroom, I hesitated before entering what had once been our shared sanctuary. Just last night, I had slept beside him, keeping up the charade until this moment. "You don't have to go," Emily said from the doorway. "This is your house too." "I know," I replied, opening the closet to retrieve the clothes I had laid out that morning. Clean clothes, untainted by the memory of playing the perfect hostess. "But I can't stay here tonight. Not with all the echoes." I changed quickly in the bathroom, leaving behind the flowery sundress I had chosen for the reunion. It felt symbolic, shedding the costume I had worn for the final performance as Robert's wife. When we came downstairs, Robert was waiting for me in the living room, his face worn and haggard. He had clearly been crying, something I had only seen twice in our marriage. William stood beside him, arms crossed, his expression grim. "Sarah," Robert began, taking a step toward me. "Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I glanced at William, who gave a slight nod. 5 minutes, I agreed. "Emily, would you mind waiting for me on the porch?" When they left, closing the door behind them, Robert sank into the sofa, his head in his hands. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he said, his voice cracking. "But you have to believe I love you. This thing with Melissa, it was stupid, meaningless. I can end it. We can go to counseling, whatever it takes."